Hi, I'm Thea. This is Theology and the Imaginative Arts. This is a sad day in the United States. It is September 11th, 2025, and as I write and record this 24 years after 9/11 and one day after right-wing extremist Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I didn't expect to be sad at his death. I consider Kirk an enemy of nearly everything and everyone I hold dear. I think that he is a dangerous man with dangerous rhetoric. I think that he is an apostate Christian, someone whose white nationalistic beliefs are so opposed to the gospel and person of Jesus that they are tantamount to an abandonment of the faith. Charlie Kirk's organization is roughly analogous to the Hitler Youth prior to the ascendancy of the Nazi Party in the Weimar Republic. I think that white Christian nationalism in the United States is roughly analogous to the German self-delusion and nationalism that gave birth to the Nazi Party about 100 years ago. Nevertheless, I am sad that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Civil liberties and the rule of law seem to be dissolving into mist in the good old USA. While I think that Kirk was a violent man with violent ideas who was pushing the country toward a violent end, I don't imagine that this will do anything except for add fuel to the fire. Individuals keep killing public figures in the United States, and they keep gunning down people at schools, usually children. There was another school shooting yesterday that didn't get much coverage because Americans continue to believe that some lives are more important than others and that some lives need to be sacrificed for the greater good of indiscriminate and unregulated gun ownership. Now, I've been watching some of the response to this horrific act online, which swing between what I would characterize as grim resignation and gallows humor to sentimental nonsense about Charlie Kirk. The grim resignation and gallows humor usually involves quoting a number of terrible things that Charlie Kirk has said about the victims of gun or political violence, about ethnic or sexual minorities, about empathy. A lot could be summed up as Charlie Kirk was a man who had no empathy for his political opponents or for many victims of injustice in the United States, and so I have none for him. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. I also see some moralistic gatekeeping of emotional expression by people who feel more sympathetic to Kirk. And I do understand the impulse to do this. Human beings in general want to feel like they're good and that they're reasonable and that their side is right and good, and they want clear and obvious marks that this is the case. So they also want to devise and control what they think is acceptable behavior and feelings. Only feelings don't play by the rules of being acceptable. Grief is complicated. You can feel angry at the people who you loved most in the world and also lost. How much more for a person whom you regard as an enemy? And make no mistake, Charlie Kirk was an enemy to many. He has devoted his life and career to the political and social disenfranchisement of people who do not share his desire to build a straight white Christian utopia. He has built a platform of trying to persuade young people to believe that America should be white and Christian and everyone else basically a second-class citizen if they're allowed to be here at all. He has partnered with the most politically violent American president that we have seen in a long time. A president who colludes with genocide in Israel and makes nice with dangerous dictators all around the globe. A president who actively mobilizes the military against democratic cities, who takes away social services and government assistance from working class people and uses that money to build concentration camps for people who have merely civil offenses. Yes, America is sending people to prison for the equivalent of a parking ticket, and Charlie Kirk thought that this was just great. So when I read articles like the Washington Post tribute to Charlie Kirk, or even Michael Cohen's reflection on his death, written for the Midas Touch network, I find myself unmoved by them. I am unimpressed and underwhelmed by this public display of grief. I will read for you part of an opinion piece by the Washington Post editorial board that was written about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. About him, they said, the 31-year-old, a husband and a father of two, founded the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA in 2012. Over time, he developed a massive following online and traveled frequently to college campuses, preaching to the choir while also relishing debate with his many detractors. That sort of dialogue is what universities are supposed to foster. And shooting someone for what they have to say is among the most un-American and evil acts that anyone can perpetrate. So my issue with this comes in the line, preaching to the choir while also relishing debate with his many detractors. That sort of dialogue is what universities are supposed to foster. Really? So Charlie Kirk is the poster child for a debater that universities want to foster the kind of debate and rhetoric that Charlie Kirk brings to the table. I had no idea. You see, I don't think that Charlie Kirk is the kind of debater that universities are supposed to have, because we actually don't have to be preoccupied as a civilization with which people get rights and which people don't, because it's actually pretty simple. You get rights because you're a human being. We don't need to have conversations about which extremist religion gets to tell everyone else to submit or do it their way, or else the government will get you. We don't need universities to be excited about fostering that kind of debate. And I'd argue that in general, we'd be better off if we were talking about something else. I wish we wouldn't have these kind of conversations at all. They are anti-democratic and anti-liberal. No, I'm not suggesting that the government should suppress them, or even that universities should suppress them. But I don't think they should be platformed really either. I'm happy to have conversations with people about how to solve problems that we disagree on. I just don't think that one of those things should be rolling back rights for an entire group of people. I think we could talk about abortion. We could talk about how to handle illegal immigration better. We could talk about the limitation of the powers of the government. Imagine that. We could talk about gun control. These are all fine topics of conversation. But we really shouldn't be talking about whether or not America is a Christian nation or should be, or whether trans people even exist. I really hate that the Post is normalizing this kind of rhetoric and this type of debater and holding him up as some kind of paragon of American free speech. Again, this is a person who is an extremist. He has violent views and wants to force people who don't believe in his brand of Christianity to live the way that he and his straight white cohort has decided they should live. Again, I am not suggesting that we take away freedom of speech or the right to dissent. What I'm suggesting is that we, and by we, I mean the damn media, rediscover the meaning of the word tolerant. Tolerant means you put up with something you don't like, you don't approve of. Universities should tolerate Charlie Kirk, but by no means should they be excited about the kind of thing that he brings to the table. Cohen's article is similar. I guess I have more sympathy for Cohen because he sees himself as being a similar kind of public figure as Kirk, and this hits home for him. I think he's writing out of a lot of emotion and a lot of fear. I have some sympathy for that, even though I don't really have much sympathy for the kind of bland liberalism that Cohen espouses on the regular. But again, Cohen seems to me willing to sweep everything Charlie Kirk stands for under the rug because he was a victim of gun violence. Here's what Cohen has to say. Because whether you agreed with him or not, Charlie was doing exactly what I do, what so many of us do. He went into schools, communities, and town halls. He stood in front of people, some who loved him and some who hated him. He tried to persuade them, to teach them, to engage them. He put himself in the arena. Isn't that what I've been talking to you about all along? The obligation to show up, to confront the lies, to try to change minds. And yet, that same commitment to showing up is what got him killed. Now, I will say, we don't actually know what got him killed. We might never know what got him killed. But I won't be precious about him. It's very likely that this was politically motivated, given who he was. But I don't think we need to celebrate everyone for showing up in the arena. I don't think everyone needs a frickin' attendance prize, and certainly not fascists. Do you know who else showed up in the arena, Michael? That would be Hitler. Hitler showed up. The Nazis, they sure showed up. They showed up so damn well that they legally won their election, and then they destroyed Germany. They did some genocide. They were responsible for the deaths of maybe 85 million people, civilian and military, across the world during World War II. Do you want to give the Nazis an attendance prize for showing up and doing what they thought was right and spreading ruinous ideas? I don't understand why liberals can't take fascism seriously. I don't understand why people who claim to care about the rights of people, and I believe them, I just don't understand how they can turn around and say, Charlie Kirk, he was doing exactly what I do. No, he wasn't. He was trying to disenfranchise a population. He just used similar means that you're using. And this is what drives me crazy about so many liberals or moderates in the United States. They fail to understand that it really actually matters what your ideas are. That fascism and democracy are mutually exclusive. I don't know what's so hard to understand about that. That some people will never play fair, that they're not going to meet you across the aisle. They're not playing the same kind of game that you're playing. And if you continue to pretend like they are, that's just more and more opportunities for them to stab you in the back. But you know what? I'm not a fan of Michael Cohen anyway. As far as I'm concerned, he cannot be trusted. I don't know whether this change of heart of his is sincere or not, but I know that I have no intention of putting my trust in someone who has the kind of history that he does. I hope that he does not run for office. If he wants to pay his dues to society, he can do that in other ways. I hope that he doesn't truly believe that he is the same as Charlie Kirk, but maybe he is. Maybe it's just all about putting yourself out there and making your mark on history. You know what else I saw online? I saw Trump's stupid State of the Union address, which only acknowledged the assassination and political violence against Republicans and rich people, the type of people that Trump likes, and completely ignored the recent history of violence against Democrats. I also, honest to God, saw a Trump supporter plead for empathy for Charlie Kirk's family from a critic who had merely quoted Kirk's line about empathy, which is, if you're unfamiliar, I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. The Kirk supporter had the nerve to say that this quote was taken out of context because you should only have empathy for the right kinds of people. That Kirk was a patriot, so he deserves empathy, but his enemies do not. So pro tip, bro, don't openly acknowledge that you have double standards. But this really fits with the whole ecosystem of Trump sycophants because they want there to be two laws of the land. They want there to be one law for Trump's friends and another for his enemies. Wait until they finally figure out that narcissists have no friends. But I will tell you what I do mourn. I mourn the unnecessary cycle of violence that is an everyday part of American life. I mourn the death of elected officials and public figures who, whether I agree with them or not, or even think they're dangerous or not, do not deserve to die by execution by the hands of a disturbed individual. More than that, I mourn the loss of life that happens seemingly every day in our country. I mourn the school children and teachers whose lives are lost because America lacks the political will to solve her most desperate problems and instead turns to fascist fairy tales. And I'm afraid that this will only get worse. I am a Christian, so I do believe Jesus when he says, love your enemies and do good to those who hurt you. MLK talked about destroying your enemies by making them your friends. I don't always think that it's possible to turn an enemy into a friend, but I think sometimes it is. I do think it's always possible to love your enemies, because love in this context isn't a sentimental feeling. Jesus isn't saying have sappy feelings about your enemies. What good would that do? He isn't saying pretend like your enemy is better than they are. What good would that do? Nor finally is he saying pretend like you don't have any enemies, which is, I think, what the establishment media wants to do. But truth be told, most of us have no relationship at all with Charlie Kirk, and so there is nothing that we can do to help this person or harm this person or this family. But most of us do know someone who is brainwashed by the cult of MAGA. I won't tell you what I think you should do. I don't know. I do know for me, there is a difference between someone who is a Trump sycophant because they were always cruel, and that they like the fact that Trump has made cruelty his whole brand. And then there are the people who were really deceived and deluded into thinking that Trump cares about them. I actually still do have some pity for the latter people. I think that they are abused people, that they are downtrodden people. I think that they're people who are a little malformed as human beings, and they do not know a friend from an enemy. I don't think that that totally excuses them, because often they should still know better. But I don't think you can do anything with a person who is truly cruel, a person for whom cruelty is the point, because they are broken in a way that means they just need to be quarantined until it's fixed. But I do think that there is a small possibility that a deceived person can change. I think that hope is part of love, and part of what I hope is that by being kind to people who are cruel or stupid or whatever, I think that there is the slightest chance that a person could learn to choose kindness over cruelty, or even love, empathy. That's my hope. I understand that people like Charlie Kirk are ruining Christianity in the United States right now, and that it's not new. But I do think that it is a shame, because I think that God loves us. I think that God loves us and would really like it if we would love one another. I believe that God would like us to stop using our power to harm and control others. I think God would love us to choose to give up having a little bit of privilege or power or station or money so that everyone can eat good food and pay their rent and receive access to medical care and go to school and just enjoy their lives. I think God would like us to spend our time telling stories and making art and exploring space and learning more about creation, instead of putting immigrants into concentration camps and starving children to death in Gaza. I think in God's kingdom, there are no violent, egomaniacal tyrants. There are no billionaires. There are no wars for ego or territory, and everyone is free to be themselves and love one another. And I think people like Jesus, or maybe Buddha, or Socrates, or Plato, are people who sometimes help human beings take up God's offer to be a part of God's kingdom. But most people aren't going to see it because we're so bad at getting the message out. And even when we do get it out, it is hopelessly compromised by human sin and violence.